Alright, well, recording in the summer, there's more light. Alright, what did I want to do? I want to do a whole bunch of things, but first I want to talk about, I've had a crazy 48 hours where I saw a bunch of different movies, one of which is Solo, and I'm going to talk about Solo. So, I saw the Solo movie, and I might even spend an entire another video talking about the bullshit going on around Solo. But before I do that, I want to talk about this movie a little bit, because I went out and saw it. Late showing. There were only, God, I think like 18 people in the whole theater. I know, I counted. This is curious. It's like, well, this really is not a very full theater for a Saturday night. And right off the bat, it's fine. I heard a million things happen behind the scenes. Like the original two directors that were hired by Kathleen Kennedy she fired them. I heard there was acting trouble with the male lead, the guy's actually playing Han Solo. I heard like all sorts of kookiness. And then they got in their sort of Pulp Fiction-esque wolf with Ron Howard to fix everything. And by my estimation, he fixed it. I mean, if there were serious problems here, by all rights, there should be very serious problems here. He fixed them up just fine. I saw the movie, I didn't hate it, it didn't distract me, and afterwards thinking about it, it's like, everything in there is fine. Perfectly fine. It's not like Last Jedi where there's a bunch of unsatisfying shit happening, or like afterwards, you're thinking about it going, that doesn't make sense, that's not even right. What the fuck, where do we go from here? This one was perfectly fine. The fact that it was a standalone helped it a lot. Okay, if you're watching this video and you genuinely haven't seen it, which seems very likely considering the numbers for this film, let me just tell you, it's fine. It's a fine movie. It has some problems, but it's fine. The problems are this. I have to talk about it at least a little bit. The video, the actual camera work, the camera production, light work, and so on, is really not very good. I mean, I've been to theaters where the projector's backlight or whatever wasn't working properly. Thor Ragnarok was for example, because I'd seen it twice. I knew one time everything looked fine. The second time I saw it, I couldn't make out what the hell was happening. So I know that's a thing that does happen, because I saw it relatively recently. I saw this movie, I thought the same thing had happened in a completely different theater, because I couldn't really make out what the fuck was happening. Everything looked murky as shit. Everything was drab. Everything was hard to see in certain scenes. I don't know if that's like maybe the problem going from director to director. From what I understand, this movie should be more of a mess. It had two directors, two guys writing, directing it. Kathleen Kennedy fires them, gets in Ron Howard. But she fires them like 3/4 of the way through the movie. So they had to do drastic reshoots. So I'm thinking that's part of this. Like, that's the reason stuff doesn't look quite right. Like, they had footage that couldn't quite use, so they just had to work with what they had. And as a result of that, somehow, someway, certain scenes look really not that great. It's not terribly distracting, but every once in a while it's like, wow, boy, could someone turn on a flashlight or a lamp or like a space lamp or something over there? So I can't tell what the shit's happening here. If you heard that there was an SJW robot, there is, but here's the thing, and I have to believe this is a Ron Howard thing, that Ron Howard was told this character has to exist, he found it annoying or whatever, and minimized it. The character is in there and is kind of annoying, but it's more played for laughs. It's like the character seems deliberately annoying, is only annoying for a few short scenes. It's played up for yucks, and then the character disappears. Yeah, there's a little bit of SJW nonsense in this movie, but it's very, very minimal. It didn't bother me at all. I thought it was perfectly fine. I didn't care. The action scenes were neat, nothing breathtaking. I like the fact that we're not saving the galaxy, but we're doing a more personal story, because I like those. And all the characters were interesting. Like, even the bad guy was kind of interesting. Like, what's his name? Paul Bettany, the guy who plays Vision. He was great. I mean, he didn't have a very complicated character. He was bad guy, crazy bad guy, but he had enough craziness in him that he was pretty menacing. Like, he has that, like, here's a crazy guy, and you don't know when he's just going to explode into violence. Reminds me of the Kingpin from Daredevil, a little bit, thematically. He just has that sort of, he's happy sometimes, but you don't know when he's going to suddenly become unhappy and murder some shit out of some people. Woody Harrelson, I mean, just good actors all around aside from the lead, and the lead was just fine. He was serviceable. The main story itself was perfectly fine. The guy, Donald Glover, was Lando Calrissian, was great. He was hammy, but awesome. I could see, I'd be up for like a Donald Glover, Lando Calrissian movie. It would be fine. It would be really fun to watch. God, other than that, not much to it. This isn't a great movie. This is not, like I said, the for its budget, this movie does not look very good. And this mark your calendar or whatever. This is going to come up again because the other movie I saw, Upgrade, pardon me, was made on $5 million, and it looked 100 times better than that. And that movie takes place almost exclusively at night in the rain in warehouses and shit, and looks way better. None of the murky, who am I looking at? None of that shit. It's not that good. It's just not that bad. It's like a pretty good movie. I think overall, and this is going to sound kind of crazy, is that I think of the new Disney Star Wars films, it is the best directed. And going down that list, like, I loved Rogue One. Like, it's a personal favorite of mine. But there are faults in Rogue One. I mean, there are places where we're told Urso Jin is a badass, like she does all this amazing stuff. We don't see it. And things like that, and the beginning of it's very slow. I like it a lot, love it a lot, but I have to recognize it has faults and flaws. Last Jedi is a mess. It is beautiful in places, it is entertaining in places, but it is a mess. Force Awakens is pretty good, but it's just the original Star Wars movie beat for beat with a lot of nostalgia. Its strength is, remember all this stuff you used to love about Star Wars? Here it is again. So, I mean, J.J. Abrams didn't phone it in. He did a fine job. But it was very much, remember Star Wars? So, out of the 4 movies that have come out, I think Solo is the best directed. It is the best directed. And I don't know how much of that, is just Ron Howard, but I gotta say this. After they edited this, because I saw Super Friends, Justice League, and that movie was very much, here's a scene by Joss Whedon, here's a scene by Zack Snyder. They don't fit, they don't mesh, and sometimes they're just back to back. Like, it's the same shot, the same scene, and then one shot looks bright and everyone's joking and cheering, the other, everyone's a miserable, dour mess. It's such a jarring transition. This movie isn't like that at all. It feels very smooth. I don't feel the differences between the directors at all. I know that there were a lot of expensive reshoots, so that's probably why. I think, God damn it, Ron Howard. Ron Howard. As an aside, I think because they got Ron Howard, and this is just my theory, I have no way of proving this or knowing this at all, but I strongly suspect that the two guys, I don't even remember their names, they've only done like a few movies prior to this, and it was mostly comedy work, whereas Ron Howard has a long history of filmmaking. I think Ron Howard was a strong enough voice that if corporate Disney, Kathleen Kennedy, or someone else said, hey, can you do this, and kind of shoehorn this, that, or the other, studio interference, and so on, I think Ron Howard has enough of a name for himself that he could just go, no. And I think that's what he did. I am absolutely certain that's what he did with the social justice robot and a number of the scenes in it. It just, I think this movie really needed a strong voice to pull it together, and I think it got. As far as my review for this, how do I fucking do this? What are the odds you're going to see this and not like it? If the word Star Wars had appeared nowhere in this film or in the titles, I'd say pretty low. Star Wars does appear in the title of this, and the main character is a staple that many people grew up with and loved so much that it works against the film a lot. If you are a hardcore Star Wars fan, I think potentially this movie has a great deal of potential to piss you off, to just set you off. Also, like I said, it's murky. Here's the thing. In any movie, it's sort of, how much is the movie good at tricking you into forgetting it's a movie? Versus, everything where it does a decent enough job of kind of slyly enrapturing you in the story works in its favor, and every time it does something to annoy you, or it does something jarring, or it does a big mistake where it's like, that takes you out of it. And this movie has enough of both to keep you, but not enough. There's enough stuff that's going to bother people. They're not going to be able to ignore the faults in this film. I'd say the odds you're going to see it and not like it, pretty good. I'd say 1 in 3. I mean, it's just, if you're a huge Solo fan, Han Solo fan, Harrison Ford, Han Solo, this guy doesn't look or act like Harrison Ford's Han Solo. He's supposed to be a younger guy. It's so close. Like I said, if we could divorce this from the entire franchise, I think this is a solid C+, B- movie, somewhere in that neighborhood. Pretty good. Solid performances from a bunch of veteran actors, pretty good story, and a very good director, Ron Howard. Easily, I'd say at least a B-, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it's not just a movie, it's a Star Wars movie, which is to say there's a lot of baggage on this, which is to say that you can't ignore that. You can't ignore that. 1 in 3. I think it's seriously 1 in 3. Turn this up a little. There we go. Would I see this again, or how long till I see this again, is part of my review, because I think that says a lot about it. Like, oh, I really liked that movie. It was great. I don't want to ever see it again. Tells you something about it. In this, like, with the gold standard being Guardians of the Galaxy, where I could have just run right back into the theater after seeing it. I would have been perfectly fine with that. Literally, perfectly fine seeing that twice in a row. This movie is close, though. I don't know. I may see this movie again in the theater. I might not. It's close. I mean, it's not bad. Nothing pissed me off. Nothing full on pissed me off. Like I said, the politically correct robot is treated as kind of a joke. Fine, good and fine. I was perfectly fine with that. So it has, maybe I'll see it in before it's out of theaters, but otherwise I would probably wait till probably wait till it's on like video on demand, like Netflix or Amazon or something. It's not a rush back into the theater to see this. It's like, I want to see it again. I wouldn't mind seeing it again, but I'm not in a hurry, and I can probably wait till video on demand. Other than that, that's all. I just wanted to do this real quick because I saw this movie and a bunch of other stuff, and a bunch of other stuff happened. But I wanted to talk about it because, dear God, this movie is getting so much hate that I don't think it earns. It's a shame because it's dying. It is dying at the box office, which is a shame because it's not a bad film. I like it more than Last Jedi. And Last Jedi, like I said, has some good scenes in it. Not to say that Last Jedi was a shitty movie. I don't think it was. It had a lot of things people had problems with, and they had good reason to. We'll get to that later. For now, that's me. I'm out.